not want, how you classify that, right? If you didn't have any definitions in there to say what it would be, even if they came in and they said adult movie theater, if your law didn't say adult movie theater is an adult use, then you don't have, they could arguably just say, I'm a business, I'm a movie theater. Forget the adult part, we didn't clarify that. So you really do need those definitions to make the distinction if somebody were to come in proposing something like that.
So why even allow it in a commercial district?
We don't.
The processing plant.
Because you have to provide for it somewhere, and I would assume you'd prefer it not to be a residential district or one of your commercial districts, which are pretty, I mean, they're all on major roadways. Rather, you put it somewhere in an industrial district where you have more screening. It's not, again, like I said, in front of a school or a church.
Yeah, I think that 1,000 feet is, there are many, there's some living areas within 1,000 feet of that place.
But there are, the idea is essentially it's possible in one way in that district. That's all you need to care about. And you know, even if that just means there's one spot, so one business, hey, this is where it is, and that's a potential. Again, we also did the added benefit of putting it under a special permit review process, which gets into additional criteria. So your great planning board members would sit and would be talking to the applicant about all of the concerns for impacts to property, quality of life, all of those things. And so that is, again, an additional oversight piece. So we've made sure that those regulations are clear. We've gotten rid of it from some of the districts where certainly it would be a very visible impact and issue. We've done as much as we can within the.
Well, at least it's narrowed down. The old zoning law was pretty expansive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Bailey, you know, we did research it, we got the information as best we could for you for that particular topic. Thank you for talking about it. Lisa Ellingham.
I also am here to talk about the RB, Article 7. And actually the previous gentleman spoke to a lot of the same points that I wanted to talk about, so I won't go through it all again. But one of the things that particularly I have a problem with is in the revision of the code, where it says that the vehicles must be parked behind the front line of the house line, where the conditions of the property allow. I don't know what those conditions are that allow. What are the property conditions that allow?
So say, like you were saying before, you don't have a very large side yard.
What's not very large?
You can't get a car through it. But without going over your property line into your neighbor's property.
It doesn't define that.
Something
So
like that.
so if your car is
One
in
person at a
with
time.
It's the physical limitations. So right, it's you know, take the footprint of the RV and reasonably where can that be parked? If you have a garage that's in the way and clearly you can't get behind your front building line because your garage is attached, for example, that's a limitation of the property. The conditions of the property don't allow you to do that. Some people might have the ability to pull it into their backyard and next to their garage. That's okay too. So the idea is that zoning is very bad at predicting everybody's circumstance. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, it does need to ultimately have a line. So this was the piece where it's, was the idea that physically, if you looked at your property, you look at your driveway, you look at your access, your garage, if all you can do is park that in front of your garage and it's 3 feet from the sidewalk, then that's the case for your property. If your neighbor has the ability to pull it back a little bit further, that's the idea.
the argument that I have is that I don't know what you think is okay. I have 20 feet on the side of my garage. I have an 8-foot wide camper. When it's opened up, it's 12 feet wide. I can't park it on top of my garage. I need to get into it. I can't get in and out of it without the slides being open. So what does that mean? Do I have to park there? Do I have to park my camper on the side, or can I leave it in my 16 25-foot long driveway with 30-foot clearance to the road.
That is exactly what that is saying.
Why does it not say that in the code? Like, I would like to have protections for myself, not to have that up to somebody's interpretation. It says that it needs to go on the side. Now, my side is level, I could level it. Not to mention, I'd have to put in a pad, because everyone here, or if you don't have a camper, will tell you, you can't park a camper on grass. You have to put in a pad at minimum, a gravel pad, cement. It's costly. I've already widened my driveway because I was never told in the 16 years that I've had a camper parked there. I widened my driveway to hold my camper. And I still have a two-car ability to park. My camper's 30 feet from the road. Why can't we just have the regulations say your camper is okay as long as it does not obstruct or cause a traffic safety issue, and it can be, stop even trying to say that it has to be on the side or in the back. Just say it has to be 20 feet from the street line, 20 feet from the side line. I understand the maximums of, you don't want the situation of the picture that you had with two RVs and a boat and everything, you can limit, just like you did, you limited to 2. But why do we even have to have language in there to say, put it on the side where your property allows, just to allow language that is hard to interpret and confusing and doesn't provide anyone protections? Why can't we just say, for safety reasons? Because, I'm assuming it's for safety and not aesthetics, because, I look at a lot of things in other people's yards. Garages, sheds, trampolines, pools, playgrounds, all kinds of things that are in other people's yards that I don't have a problem with. It's their yard. I don't understand why my camper in the front of my house is an issue to anyone. As long as it's not a safety issue, I don't understand why it has to be put into the zoning code at all. I have had several conversations. I have spoken with the mayor. We've had some very nice conversations, and did say that the way it's written isn't intended to force me to have to move in my particular situation. You think it wouldn't force me to move it, but what is my protection here? How do I know that? I'd love if Ann could live 120 years, but she probably isn't. So what's the next person going to say? So that's all I have to say.
Peter Santana.
So, one section that I had a little bit of concern about in the zoning code, I believe there's a lot of holdover from the last zoning code that we had that was passed in the 90s. But that's section 16 in terms of actual enforcement of the zoning. So, the statement that I have prepared here, so enforcement of code and zoning in the village of Bergen is fairly wide open in terms of recourses available for CEO and ZEO enforcement of the code, with very little oversight from many other village officials. So we do have a zoning appeals board in the event that someone wants to make an appeal, although currently that process costs $300 if you do want to appeal a zoning officer decision for something which isn't explicitly spelled out in the code, which is something I personally don't agree with. But given that that is the only recourse that we have, and that committee only meets once a month, I feel that we need some additional protections, for citizens and residents in the village who could be affected by any zoning or code enforcement activity in the village. There's currently no need for someone to come in the current iteration of the draft the complainant to actually be identified so that you can actually talk to your neighbor about the complaint. That's a common problem I've seen in the community, is that people don't talk to each other. They call the village and they yell and scream, and I think as a community we need to work on that a little bit more. But to suddenly receive a zoning enforcement notice for something you could have talked to your neighbor about, it seems like a giant waste of time and money for everybody involved. But also in the current code, all zoning, in the current draft of the code, all zoning enforcement violations have become misdemeanors where they were originally just violations, punishable by up to 15 days in jail as a maximum penalty. So that in and of itself didn't concern me too much, but combined with guidance from the New York State Zoning Enforcement Manual published in May of 2019, an excerpt from that states that although those zoning offenses are deemed misdemeanors for jurisdictional purposes, they're not necessarily conferred for all protections and misdemeanors in the imprisonment provision if the provisions are low enough to qualify for treatment as a violation. The principal distinctions between treatment as a violation opposed to the treatment as a misdemeanor are that for a violation, the accused is not entitled to a jury trial or the appointment of an assigned attorney if they're unable to afford one for themselves. Whereas imprisonment, if it were to exceed 15 days, is treated as a real true misdemeanor, and you're able to have a jury trial and you'd be afforded an attorney if you're unable to afford one. So in summary, all of that combined, if the current code as it's currently written were to pass, that would allow the town of Bergen JP to issue jail sentences of up to 15 days for zoning and code violations, which traditionally have been just that, violations and not jailable misdemeanors, without the right of the accused to a jury trial or an attorney. So the culmination of that is a gross violation of our Sixth and Seventh Amendment rights of the Constitution of the United States, which allow us to know our accuser and to have a jury trial by our peers for both civil and for criminal offenses. And with the broad power that's currently defined for the CEO and CEO in this current zoning draft, at the very least we need some protections for citizens and residents so that wherever there's something not explicitly spelled out, like you mentioned, that we're not just beholden to the interpretation of a zoning enforcement officer in the future. And really that's my concern, because this document could have a lifespan of another 20 or 30 years from now, and it's not very frequently updated. So to give someone that much leeway without really a form of recourse, unless you are able to pay $300 for each appeal, that seems rather arbitrary. And although a lot of the zoning codes I've read are written in this fashion, that doesn't mean that it's right, legal, or constitutional. So we aren't just any village. We are in a very precarious position in the midst of both residential and rural environments. I think that we can do better and actually, provide our citizens and landowners with rights to be able to appeal and have a very clear path. So that's all I really have to say.
So, the bottom line is, if you haven't got a sense of humor, you shouldn't be in a village like Bergen. He's just doing it. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so we try to put everything in there. So, I know I talked with a number of board members, I talked with Joe, and his perspective, I know he's supportive of this. And, had his questions, talked with the mayor, all of which is good. And I thank everybody who's worked on this, because I know what it is to do it, and all the complaints and all the problems. And quite honestly, if you expect to get everything answered in one law, it's not going to happen. So, thank you. I just want to thank the board, the consultants that have worked on this. And my big problems were addressed in there, so I'm happy.
All right.
Thank you, Rob. Bob Fidelli.
Here comes the old man. It shows good. Anyway, what I'd like to say is, and I'd like to express my opinion, that I'm in favor of this zoning law. I think they've done great work. I don't know how much more they can do, but there's, as you heard, all you folks heard, there's always points of reference and things that can be changed and rediscussed. And maybe the language will be adopted and things can always work out. We're Americans. This is Bergen. This is a good village. You can see by your patronage here tonight that proves what I'm saying. We can always work things out here. And we have. I have been a former member of the board. I was on for 5.5 years. And let me tell you, we did a lot of work. As a lot of you folks know, look at this wonderful building, which was nothing but a blown up water pump building. It's just sitting there vacant. And look at it now. Your tax money helped that get here. Then what happened? There was a grant that paid us back for that tax money. So that's what this woman has been doing for the past 12 years. She's constantly going for grants. And to help this village, we do this to help everybody here. And that's why I'm in favor of, I'm in favor of the zoning law. I regret that it had to come to a bad decision on the board. I don't understand that yet. I don't think it needed to happen. And that it did happen cost $36,000. That's not a nice thing. I mean, I don't want my taxes to go boop to pay for something like that. But we're going to have to share that one way or another. But if we work together as a village, anything can be solved. Any problem in this village can be worked out. I don't see any difficulties. Because this woman, she brought the subject up about trailers. I know that can be solved. I know that can be solved to her satisfaction because she is a decent citizen of the village. She's not an idiot. She's not parking. She really doesn't know me. She's not parking trailers all over the place and garbage cans. You can see what she's concerned about, and it's understandable. And that's why I want to say I'm in favor of this. I want to go on record as saying I'm in favor of it. I would back it 100%. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Bob was the last person who signed to speak. We have a couple more minutes before we start our board meeting. If there's someone else who would like to speak for a couple of minutes. Sure.
David, the block 117 relation. I didn't sign in because I didn't know exactly how this was going to work out, what was going on. I did not realize I'm 2 years late showing up. I'm one of those folks that drives a semi for a living. So I'm a little concerned about the fact that I do like to bring it to the house, to maintain it, grease it, take my litter out of the cab, put it in a waste paper basket and clean it up. The driveway is too small. I'm looking to grow that and figure that out. I don't bring the trailer. That stays at 7-Eleven. I appreciate everything that people are talking about, but the fact that I do pay taxes. I pay probably more taxes than a lot of people here for fuel taxes and road taxes to be able to use my equipment on the road. To the tune of about $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's a lot. The privilege of being able to bring it home and spend 2 hours or 4 hours is a privilege. I'll agree. If I've got to do something different, I will. But it's just the fact that it's the commercial piece of it. I live next to the railroad, 17 New York Street. It's down to Spring Street where traffic comes and goes several times a week for deliveries. And then, you know, other commercial equipment comes through. I don't feel like I'm offending anything, but I'm a lot closer to 60,000 gross weight by the city. It sits at 20,000 empty. So there's numbers. We're talking about numbers. I only wanted to just address it because of the semi-truck issue. It was commented on. And I thank you all. I don't know if we can come to some sort of agreement on that, or if I'm going to have to take it out of town, which is fine, but I just wanted to just address it. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Can I just a clarification on that? So you're not storing it on your property?
It has sat there for the weekend. I bring it in on Saturday, and then I'll take it out till Sunday, quietly as possible. Well, I'm just, you know, it has, I'll say that. Not looking for grandfather or anything like that. If it's a thing where I can bring it in for 4 hours and do what I want to do and then take it back out without paying $100 for the wash, it would be nice. If it isn't, then it isn't, you know, but, as you said, you can't address everything. I had no intention of speaking, but you're getting involved in it and you're going, so thank you for the permission.
No, I appreciate that, and that's, yeah, so that's, you know, I would say, again, and this is interpretation, I know nobody likes that, but it, you know, that would be not, again, the intent of where it's stored. And again, as long as, you know, from a visibility standpoint, you know, the greatest extent practicable if it's in there. Now, the one thing I just want to make a clarification of as well, and the gentleman who spoke about the zoning board, one of the powers provided to the zoning board of appeals is interpretation. So the code enforcement officer actually isn't able to go, well, I think, right? The interpretation piece is what goes to the zoning board of appeals should there be a problem in that standpoint. And that is a lot of, I mean, talk about good people, good village. There's a lot of conversations, right, that happen as well between code enforcement officer and zoning board. So that is one way that when there's a question, it's not one person. The zoning board is a board of individuals who will look at the context of the situation and help respond to that. So, you know, again, obviously I know there's still concerns to that effect, but that's one clarification I just want to help.
Thank you.
In addition to my adult uses, the zoning law update makes reference to a study conducted by the village of Bergen. It makes reference to similar studies and establishments. Do you have access to that information?
Okay, do you know, can you give me the section?
It's in section 5-5.
So that is the holdover from your existing law. That's the language carried over. And that's a great question. Maybe that's a study that is in the record. Knowing the vintage of this law, maybe that's not available. I'm not sure. But
But it must be changed.
yeah, I mean, to that effect, the purpose statement, the latter section of it is really getting to the point of it. So certainly if the study doesn't exist, we can remove that reference. That makes perfect sense.
But it does point out the non-benefits of having it should be left.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't remove the purpose statement. I would say, again, if the study isn't around anymore, we know happens. So if that's the case, then I would just say we keep it to the actual point of the detrimental, harmful impact piece, health, safety, all that, but just not reference the study. It's really not, I mean, like I said, this is across the country, a battle that communities are having. So, you know, it's great that Bergen did a study at one point. But, yeah, that specific reference, that's all I'm saying. We'll leave the purpose statement, that is important, would strike that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll take one more, and then if there are comments unrelated to the zoning law, or things you're concerned about during our actual board meeting, there's a section, privilege of the floor, and if you'd like to express something other than the zoning law at that point, you're certainly welcome to say what you've done.
I just have a point of information. So you mentioned that the original contract with John and Holly was for $36,000 that took us through the July 14th vote. Any idea how much all this additional stuff is costing? Can you share it?
I can. In order to have the public information meeting, so that we made sure that everybody that had questions was able to be there, who could be there. We certainly didn't want anyone to feel that they were left out, that we had not included anyone. That meeting was $4,000. This meeting, to bring Molly and John back, along with all the work that they do in between. So like I said, any of the comments that you make, any of the emails that you send, that we send on to Molly and John because that's the work that they provide for us. That is all hourly charges, okay? So this meeting right now, that they are here, and bless them for being here and supporting us and all the things that they've done, because we could not have done this without them. This meeting is $2,500. Okay? You're talking hourly rates that are amazing, okay, for the work that they do, but we need to have them here in order to complete this process. So, you know, we understand how that works. We were hoping, because of we went through the process, we did everything right up to the minute, up to the dotting the i's and crossing the t's, because that's how we do things here. And I can tell you that, I can swear to that to you, because that's how I run things. Everything is done correctly. And everybody's good. So that's what it is. I mean, we provided all the information we could. We went above and beyond as far as communication that was necessary. We did all of those things. All of those things. So to move beyond that, that's where we are at this point. That's where we are. Yes?
I just have a quick comment. You do wonderful things sending out those village bulletins every month with our electric. But I don't remember seeing a whole lot about this in any of those. I think you could be a little more forthcoming with some of the things you're doing. Because I read those front to back and I don't remember anything.
In 2 years' time, there were 14 notices in those weekly or monthly newsletters. There were other ways that information was provided. And I've talked to many of you, and it's been wonderful, actually. I've gotten to know more people, and we've conversed, and we've talked about things. You can sign up for the board minutes, and that's been in the newsletter many times.
At some point I got cut off, I don't know why.
We put out a notice, our system went down, we lost the email addresses, and that was several months ago. And notices were sent out to make sure that you re-signed so that you would receive those. I talked to folks saying, you know what, I've seen that information, I've seen it in the newsletter, you know, it's one of those things I forgot, but I'm going to do that now. So I'm really happy to hear that more people are going to sign up for the minutes, because our board minutes are very complete. And all of the information, the specifics, all of the specific information that came out when we discussed At the planning board meetings, the topics, I always try to make sure that that information is in my report. All of the other things that are going on in the village that we're involved in, all of that information you will find in the ordinance. They're all there, so please sign up.
Information on chickens, and that was all over the place.
That was a very unique situation. We've had this many people coming to meetings, and we had a lot of input. We had a committee working on presentations for and against chickens. There were a lot of people involved, a lot of things happening during that time, and we needed to make sure that everything was consistent across the board. So with all of this too, the information was constantly being promoted and sent out, and I hope in the future, we'll work a little bit harder if we can to get more information on, if it's appropriate to do that. We did put out every notification that we were legally obligated to do, plus the other information. It wasn't obligated to put it in our newsletter, it's not obligated to put it in our board minutes or anything like that. So we did all of those things to hopefully make sure that everybody was communicated with.
And Mayor, if I can, I just want to add, I think the Village of Bergen does a great job in terms of transparency. And by law, you're required to do one public hearing before you adopt the code. This is the second public hearing, and then we had that open house last week. So, is it third public hearing? I'm losing track. So, it's clearly something that the village is taking their time and trying to do right, and being as open as possible, as an outsider perspective.
The same with notifications as well. I know, unfortunately, New York State law doesn't recognize the village website, things like that. So it's great, and not a lot of communities avail themselves to that. So that's a good thing that you have access to.
Okay, with that, we're going to close the public hearing on the zoning law. We are going to now continue with our board meeting, so please stay. Lots of things that we certainly have to share. All right.
You can have a combination of two RVs or accessory vehicles.
That's the,
regular board meeting. The first of which is approval of the bills. I know everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the bills. If there are no questions, I can hear a motion to approve that for payments.
I'll make a motion.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Looks like it's carried. Okay. Approval of the July 14th, 2021 meeting minutes. They were sent out in the email. If there are no questions, a motion to approve. Joe, is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved. We have reports by officers that come out at every meeting, and because they're usually very lengthy, we have moved to, instead of reading everything during every board meeting, we send them out ahead of time for review by the board members. So we'll just touch on a couple of things because of time here. But I just wanted to relay a couple of things. Our Main Street grant, and I hope that you have seen all of the wonderful things that have happened on Main Street, will be closing now, okay? We are done. It's been almost 3 years, all right, of a 2-year process, but because of COVID, things had to change and decisions had to be given. So we are in the final stages of completing that process. So very exciting, and at some point, I'm hoping in October, we will have an open house, so folks can take a look before and after and possibly see what that was all about. You've probably heard the American Rescue Act. There's a plan in place. Villages, towns, all the municipalities across the country are being given federal funding. There are a lot of requirements, a lot of jumping through hoops that have to take place. We're very confined to what we can use the money for. Most of it is mitigation for COVID and how we can continue to mitigate the virus. There are sections dealing with wastewater, sections dealing with stormwater. So there's a lot of work there to continue to put this stuff together. So I want you to know that I've been attending webinars and getting as much information as I can. So when it's time to put a plan together, and I'm actually in the process of doing that, it'll be presented to the board as a proposal of how to use those funds in the best way for the Village of Bergen. Okay, so that's in the works. So if you hear about the American Rescue Plan, we're getting some funds. We've actually gotten half of it in already. I applied for it a few weeks ago, and lo and behold, we got a check. So half of it is here. So we're on our way with that. Otherwise, I think that you could, take a look at it if you choose to. All right. Courtney, anything you want to cover in yours?
I think everything saw the plan. We have done some commitments to road work lately and a lot of line work. Just like to think how municipalities can help and we have the church building here. We're here to help us. Mike Johnson with the town of Bergen was extremely helpful in the road work. County, Akron, and Gaston.
Absolutely. So that process that you saw was a coordination between the town and county and several other municipalities. So mutual aid right in front of you, see how that works and how everybody comes together to help out. So
Well-oiled machine, no pun intended.
yes. It worked out very, very well. And yes, again, thank you to every community that helped out with the insurance and our thank yous for that.
Mayor, we think we have an answer on accessory.
Okay. So that, I apologize, I just couldn't visualize where we were talking about. So the accessory vehicles piece is typically that reference to like a trailer that would be pulling like a boat or, what have you. But in this case, that's not the applicability of the definition. So what we can do to make sure that's clear is just strike that.
Thank you, Mom.
Yep.
Okay, also, in the reports is the report of inspections and permits given by the code enforcement officer. So that's available to you as well, if you want to take a look at those reports. Is there a motion to accept the reports here with the change on Churchville in the reports on?
I'll make a motion.
Paul, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay cool. I want to knock someone's teeth out with this. like the last meeting.
All right, this is privilege of the floor section. I know there was somebody coming in. Yes. Okay, Mr. Fee.
Here so I can be heard better. I first want to say thank you to Mayor Bergen and the board for listening to my concern tonight. We have an issue. I live on 12 Parkview Drive. You know what Parkview is. We're the first house right, the only house on the right side, coming off of 19. Speeding is a really serious issue. I know you had bumps on Rochester, bumps on Munger, now you took them up for the stone, that's all good. The biggest problem I see with Parkview Drive is you've got two 45-degree angles coming off of Buffalo at 19. And if it's bad, you know, our grandson lives with us, he's 5. You've got houses in the second, you got kids in the second house and the end house. And I can't imagine the end house on Parkview Drive coming off of 19. They're doing 70 miles an hour, easy. Easy coming down, because they open it up, I hear them coming off of 19. I'm like, where are they? And they go by my house going at least 40, 50. By the time they get down to, you know, I know that speed bumps aren't the favorite thing of people. I know there's some opposition to it. I hit the ones on Rochester once coming out of the post office. They're good speed bumps. I've been over speed bumps, so you go up and over them, you can drive right over them. You're not going to go over these once and you're done. You're not going to do it again at 50 or 60 miles an hour. So one proposal I'd like is to possibly put up speed bumps in the spring. You had mentioned that you're probably done until the spring on Munger, and I know you got to put them up for the plows and such, and you got to let that gravel settle a little bit. I get all that. But it's really a concern of ours. My grandson's really good. He knows the state far enough away, but I've raised my 6 children there from 4 to 15 years old, so I taught them all how to drive, and there's no bigger nightmare than the pulling backing out of that driveway and someone's flying off of 19. And the only thing I'm thinking of is getting T-boned, because some of them are moving pretty quick. Now, especially for an inexperienced driver, okay? One of the big issues, or things I've tried, I've been to Park Road, I've talked to the sheriffs, I've gone right in the building, I've gone to West Sally Drive and talked to the troopers. I said, you are welcome to sit on my property if you want. And just sit right in the corner where the fire hydrant is. You'd be tucked away enough, even doing 45 miles an hour, you're going to get the ticket. But if they really want to have a ball, if the policeman's ball, right? Hide down by the school medic, inside that little cutoff, there's a block of trees there. Before they hit Buffalo Road, they'd be doing 70, they'd lose their license. That'd be it. And, I just think it's a serious issue. And when I talked to Barb, your secretary, a month or so ago, because it put me over the top when they're spinning their wheels and causing all this smoke. And it came from across the street, which is very unusual. Because our driveway's right across from Harris Wilcox, the business. And they've been wonderful neighbors, don't get me wrong, I love them. They've helped us out many times, but they plowed our driveway, they're great neighbors, but even Barb says, out of the business? She was shocked. I go, well, whoever it wasn't like, the guys that work there, but just people, and just flying out of there, and that's when I just said, I'm watching from my picture window, I said, I can't do this anymore. I have to do something, so I called Barb, and I also talked with Renee last week, I talked to Courtney yesterday, I got the whole gamut going. And, I didn't understand what this was all about, how I get up here and share my concerns, but it's a concern. And I know that you guys, do you have more pull with the sheriffs and troopers? I don't know. When you call them and you talk to them, I don't know what your position is on that, how that works for you guys, but I've gone in there myself because I just can't, I don't know what else to do.
Well, I can tell you, Mr. Fee, that when we have our, periodic meetings with the Sheriff's Department, we've discussed speed in the village. They come as often as they can. There have been numerous tickets, speeding tickets being given out. Folks have requested speed bumps. It's not, in taking a look at whether or not the village would be liable for any situation, for speed bumps in the village. And I called several state agencies and so on, and they said that many villages have speed bumps. And it's pretty common, and the only liability we would have is if they were not installed properly. So, you know, we've taken care of those kinds of things. I don't know if you know that, you know, where there was lawn damage, where people try to avoid the speed bumps. We did actually discover who was responsible for driving on people's lawns, and that person is no longer welcome in the village of Bergen, and they know that because they haven't been back. And the grass is growing on those lawns. Well, we had to take them out for this. While I was on vacation, I got a call from the sheriff letting me know that there was vandalism and somebody ripped out the speed bump on Motor Street. I mean, there are, you know,
Yeah. Well, I
they
wonder
were
how
in there,
people's shoes
security,
go down.
yes.
They
So
got it.
that was, yes.
Yeah.
We've gotten requests for speed bumps on just about every street in the village.
Yeah.
You know, we do have the sheriffs come in, they do their patrols. Again, they are giving out tickets, but they can't be there all
I
day.
know, and I get that, and I appreciate it, because I saw one sitting up at Apple Tree and the old restaurant there, and he was looking for gliders through the stop sign, and I pulled up, I had my grandson with me, he was thrilled to talk to him. And I said, I mentioned to him what I'm talking about tonight, and I said, you were welcome to sit on my property. He followed me home to make sure that I was legit and who I said I was. Because he turned around in my driveway, waved to me, and went back. But he's not been back to sit there.
To sit there.
You know, I'm home all the time, I don't work anymore, so I know I would see him. But I just,
They do sit on Rochester Street.
yeah, and I know, I get that.
Yeah, and I know, he's
Exactly.
frustrated, trust me.
I know I can't be the only one, but I think Parkview is very vulnerable because it's very wide open. You know, you go down Rochester Street and the houses, you know, 30 feet, 20 feet apart.
It doesn't stop them though.
No, I know,
It
yeah.
doesn't stop them.
But, you know, you come on Buffalo Road, you're like, your eyes are like, wow, open field. You know, you rip it open, there you go. Coming off of 19, they get past that last house by the park, and they, well, there's zipping before that. It's just,
Let me get in touch with the sheriff again. Sheriff Andre is the person that's usually in the village, and he's wonderful, he's very accommodating, and if we call him, he's here. He has a good relationship with a lot of the kids in the village, and we'll give him a call and see, check on the patrols that are still waiting to be done, and maybe we can kind of push them in your direction a little bit,
Yeah.
with the other streets.
sure. I mean, look, I know that I'm not the only issue.
It's fine.
In little town, 30 miles an hour is not very fast. And it doesn't take much to get up to 45, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
because we've all done it. We're like, you know, it's easy to do. I appreciate you guys listening to me and
We appreciate you
giving me
coming.
a chance to speak my piece.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
Thank
You too.
Thank you.
Stay cool.
Yeah, I'll try.
Anyone else?
Yes. I'm trying to think how to formulate this. I want to, again, probably thank the board and staff for always being there and being willing to listen. I'm sorry I didn't get this in while more people were here. Just to reiterate that people who have questions and concerns need to call because we have an administration and office staff who are willing to listen and to give the proper information that's needed. And that any information that's disseminated by people who have questions or concerns should be certain that they're disseminating correct information so that it doesn't create problems with people who do not have all the facts. And so there's been value to these past several meetings for that reason. I'm hoping that some of the people, unfortunately, involved a lot, but I'm hoping some of them will realize that they were able to satisfy their concerns by being here, but that they need to do that initially when something comes and starts and not let get into a full-blown issue that could have been avoided in the first place. So, again, I thank you all for being available, the planning board and the staff. mainly the truth should all be there, that we all need to respect each other, and that one individual is any better than the next individual. And we need to extend that respect and dignity to each of these people here, and the people that we come into contact with on a daily basis. And I think that's one of the reasons that makes Bergen a very lovely place to live, and people who come are happy with it. People who are not happy with it and make changes, to remember there's a process to bring your unhappy concerns to and live to help to resolve them. And we have to all remember that there's never going to be anything that each one of us is going to be completely satisfied with, but if we're all working for and to the intent of the betterment of the village, we will continue to be a lovely community that will continue to grow, and people will be happy to be here. And unfortunately, those that are not happy to be here, I feel sorry for them, because they're missing out on a great deal, because we have good people here and good leadership. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks, Greg.
Even if they steal your speech.
Anyone else?
I have a question. I'm a detail person, and I'm sorry, I'm up here so you can see me. I guess this is primarily a question for Joe and Paul. I was reviewing the minutes, and Joe, the June 30th meeting, you made a motion to send the proposed zoning for code to the county planning board for review and approval. And Paul, you seconded that motion, but then you guys both voted no. And I don't understand it. I'm just wondering if you can shed some light on that for me.
Actually, I thought how it would work, it was a planning board document, like I handed it over to the board, and after the board got it, I thought we had time to discuss it amongst ourselves to tweak it. But the way it is, it's like these consultants, they just came up with the language,